Everybody on TV and in the audience, this is the June 15th meeting of the Capital Improvements Program Committee. Why don't we just go around the table just to say who we are. Ellen, let's start with you.
Ellen Markowitz, Goffstown School Board.
Samantha Kearns, Budget Committee.
Kelly Boyer, Select Board Rep.
Kimberly Peace, on the Planning Board and the Chair.
Gail Lebrecht, Member at Large and Recording Secretary.
Brad Parkhurst, Community at Large Member.
And Derek Horn serving as staff liaison tonight.
Great. Thank you, everybody. So tonight we have library, police, and fire. Before we do that, typically at the beginning of the meeting, we go over the minutes from the last meeting. They were not distributed, so we will be going over those meeting minutes at the next meeting, which would be June 29th. If I get my glasses, and if anybody's interested in that. So
That's correct.
yes, okay. So is there a representative here tonight from library? Just be sure to introduce yourselves, please. So the new matrix is the one on the table.
Right.
So there's a tab in our folders, and let's see.
Library's orange.
It's on page 3.
Library starts on page 3.
It's on line 126.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that, ladies. You want to introduce yourselves, please?
Good evening. I'm Kathy Coughlin. I'm Vice Chair of the Library Board of Trustees, and I'm going to be doing the bulk of the presentation. Samantha Holman, the Chair of the Library Board of Trustees, is with me tonight as well. I just want to begin with a little bit of a review of our project. I know many of you have probably heard about it already, but just for members in the audience and on TV, just as a refresher, the Goffstown Public Library is almost 114 years old. It is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. When it was constructed in 1909, the library was serving a community of about 2,500 people. We now average about 18,000 residents with minimal change to the building footprint. In 2018, we did the Library Board of Trustees conducted a community survey, and we're actually working on doing an updated survey, so that's in the works with the board. A foundation was formed in 2020. It's a 501c3, and so we're kind of like the fundraising arm, essentially. And the foundation is doing work to prepare for a capital campaign. We're working with some project managers already. S&P Architecture and McFarland Johnson are doing our engineering and architectural work, and we've contracted with Bowen as a construction management firm, and they help us develop the numbers that we've used in our projects throughout this process. We did do a fundraising feasibility study in 2022. I think everyone knows that the bond vote in the spring did fail, and what we heard most was the overall cost of the project was the biggest pushback. What we're trying to do is break out some of the projects that we feel we might be able to accomplish inside the current building. We still plan on needing an addition, but we're hoping if we can break out some of these projects, it will bring down that total cost. The library has, when we talk about some of the monies with the library effort so far, we have our operational budget, which is taxpayer funds, but the library also, because many people give to it, we have funds that are unrestricted funds that are not taxpayer funds. These might be from donations, bequests, that sort of thing. So we've been using monies from those accounts, the non-taxpayer money, to lay the groundwork towards this addition. So that's what helped us purchase the grass lot next door. It's what paid for the survey, our fundraising feasibility study, the building feasibility study. So our investment so far with our private funds is $447,000, 470, and again, that was the non-taxpayer funds that we've already invested into the project. In order to try to reduce that total cost, we're looking into using grants, and most of the grants that we're looking at are requiring some sort of match. You know, you already have to have a certain money set aside that, you know, if they pay 10, you might have to pay 5 or whatnot. So some of the projects that so this is not a end-all be-all list, refurbishing the historic windows. They're original to the building, and so they would not be a replacement because it's historic. They would have to be refurbished. And it cost about $3,000 per window, to give you a rough idea. Some of the other projects, if we do the windows, the shelving that's currently in that room, when they needed to add more books, they covered up those windows. So we would have to remove that shelving and actually build new shelving, and we would not cover the brand new windows. So we'd have to go around them, and they're not, you can't just cut a piece because they're in the middle. You'd have to redo the whole line. So that's in the south. That's the part that looks up Main Street. Other things we had talked about, trying to do some handicap improvements to the only public bathroom we have. The honor wall that's in the north room that has the gold leaf listing soldiers from Goffstown who have served in various wars. And then there's other projects. A lot of it's on the second floor, like the pocket doors and things of that nature. What we're looking for as far as our CIP request, if you take a look at the chart, I don't know what you call the application. In year 2024, we're asking for $200,000 so that we would have some monies available in order to do, have money available for matching. So if we apply for an LCHIP grant, we can say, yes, we have X amount of money that we can use to match with that project. We think that should cover not all these projects, but it would give us at least a foothold of being able to move forward. We still have the rest of the building project on there, moved it out to year 2025, but obviously any projects that happen with any grants would come off of that other price. But we left what the total building cost is in there. And as far as asking for the monies, I did want to make a note that the library does not get impact fees. So with any new construction, the library, it does not get any impact fees. So I know that's one way for a lot of our town departments to have some other monies is through that aspect. And we also don't have a capital reserve account because most of the time we've been relying on the people who give us donations to help us with some of these projects. So we're hoping that the capital campaign will still help us offshoot a fairly good chunk, but it's obviously not going to be the whole project.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So on the 2024 request for $200,000, on the request itself, it states that it's for matching for the capital, or for grant funding
Yes.
for matching. But you mentioned some other projects. What is the exact use of these funds? Is it specifically to be held for grants and matching, or is
Yes.
so it's not going to be used for any projects at all?
It would be available for, just for matching. So if let's say the windows cost $25,000, and if we have to do a 50% match, that 50% would come from that.
Right, but will the funds at any point in time, so you're going to maintain a $200,000 balance for ongoing grant matching?
We're just looking for this one time. The plan was this one-time amount to work on these specific projects.
I understand, but if you're asking for $200,000 to apply for, let's say, 10 grants,
Yeah.
and you receive the funds for one of those grants, that $200,000, is the intention to ever use that for any kind of building project? I'm not talking about the grant money
Yeah.
awarded, I'm talking about that pot of $200,000.
No, the goal is to use it for matching.
Well, so once you match it to something, you have spent it.
Yes, then it would be spent, so then it wouldn't be 200 anymore, it'd be whatever it is.
So is the intention then to have that replenished? This is just a one-time, once you reach your, I guess I'm confused based on the grants that we discussed.
Yeah,
Because that
we're-
doesn't make sense.
We're anticipating for it to be like a one-time, just so that we can get the ball rolling with applying for grants, because they were all saying you needed matching, the majority that we were looking at were saying that you needed matching funds. And so the only way for us to do that is to have some funds available in order to match. So it wasn't like, oh, we only did one grant, there's $100,000 left over, we're gonna use that towards X. The intent is to use it to be available for matching, even if it has to get encumbered into another year, it'd be for matching. a grant.
Okay, thank you.
Does that
Brad?
answer?
I think what Kelly is asking, and maybe Sam is also, is that you get $200,000 in money. You have $50,000 in grant that you're gonna, whatever, and you have $100,000 or $50,000 remaining. Is that money going to be used towards funding of the new addition?
We're
Tell me if
anticipating-
I'm wrong if I'm asking that question.
I mean, it's not a bad question. It's not exactly what I was asking, but thank you.
Oh,
for it.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a good
Yeah,
question.
our intent is to keep it available for matching,
Okay.
for any matching grant to come up.
So theoretically then, say you need it for a 10% match or something, so you get a $20,000 grant. If I did that math right. Or no, anyway, so say you have that pot of money. So then is that ultimately reducing the $7.2 million? Because I think
Yes.
that's one of the feedback we definitely heard from the voters this
Yeah.
year. Okay. Has there been thought or input, and I will get to you, Ellen, into revising the design? And or maybe part two is how much grant money do you actually see reducing that $7.2 million total?
Yeah, like, I had looked into the window, sorry, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. Hang on, blanked on my glasses. Like, the window, like I said, the windows would cost, this was a rough estimate from a refurber, like, $3,000 per window. I believe the library has 25, so that would be like a $75,000 project. And L-CHIP is a 50% match, so, you know, we would need the 35,000 from that. And so then that would have been one project that would have been part of that 7.2. So that 75 is subtracted from the bulk of the project. Does that
Okay.
make sense?
But I guess if you have an idea of, I mean, are we looking at this $200,000 is going to mean we can reduce it by $1 million, $2 million, $50,000? Do you have a ballpark idea?
Some of the grants that we had explored were awards up to $1 million. That doesn't mean we'll necessarily get awarded that amount.
Right, right.
But there's the potential for it. So, and some of the feedback that we had gotten on the project as presented last year was, is there anything that you can do now? This whole project isn't a need right now. What do you need right now? So that's part of what this is identifying the immediate needs of the building and then using our updated survey feedback to continue to address the things that are most important to library patrons in the community and seeing which of those projects we can pull forward
Okay.
and address right now, or not right now, but in the more immediate future. Giving our fundraising organization more time to continue to fundraise so that hopefully between the grants and the amount fundraised, we can reduce that overall project cost when it comes time for it to ask for it again.
Okay. Ellen, I'm sorry, you were patient. You had a comment?
Yes, the 200,000, where's that money coming from?
It would be, it'd be on the ballot for,
Not budget, but it's on the warrant article?
I honestly, I think it'd be in the budget.
Derek, yeah.
So my suggestion would be a capital reserve fund, because if it was in the budget, it would only be for that 1 year appropriation, and the only way to encumber it to a next year would to have an active project that's under contractual obligation. So a capital reserve fund would be more appropriate for, it sounds like what you're describing,
Okay.
and that is a separate warrant article to create it and name who the agents are.
So I guess that's why I was asking what if the intention for the funds is to be used on projects that grants were awarded for. That's kind of what I was getting at,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, I wasn't sure of the actual, the agency of how to.
It's just ultimately that the matching funds will be used for projects.
Yes.
Yes.
So, yes, would be the
Yes.
answer to my
Yes.
question. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So then, given that thought going forward, do we think it's realistic to still have the $7.2 million on the matrix for 2025?
We still believe that this is a project that should be moving forward. We're just looking to try to get some of the things done, smaller projects that are embedded in it to be done first, essentially. So I do think it should be on the matrix. If, you know, the board here the committee here feels that it should be pushed out, then obviously we'll take that guidance, you know, I mean, that's the role of, you know, this committee is to do that hard job of balancing all the various requests in town to try to keep things very even, but we still believe that this is a necessary project.
Well, I guess I was thinking in terms of the 7.2 million. So let's, I mean, this is all just planning exercise. So let's
The
say,
amount.
right. So let's say in the next year, you think between the grants and the work that you could get done, it gets reduced to 6 million. So should we have the next, and on the matrix for a lower amount, looking at 2025?
We'd hesitate to adjust the amount without knowing the amount of grants we'll get awarded or which projects we'd pull forward. We want to keep the project earmarked, but without having an updated number for you, I would hesitate to change it. If that
Okay.
makes sense.
Okay.
Because nothing's going to guarantee, we can apply for multiple grants and there's not going to be a guarantee that we get them either, so.
Right. And there's been no thought to maybe phasing this in multiple phases?
That's sort of what we're trying to do. But part of that is identifying funds for the projects that we feel we can pull out as a phase one approach. So we have talked about, you know, can we do a parking lot first? That's a big need in the village. It's a need for the library, but parking lots are expensive. And we don't have the funds available right now. So, you know, part of our exercise in listening to the voter feedback and planning from there is deciding which projects we can address and how we can address them with the funds that we have available. We'd love to build a parking lot right now, but it's not entirely feasible.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Couldn't you, at a minimum, reduce it by $200,000? Because that's what,
I would say you're pushing it out another year in construction costs, you cannot.
okay.
Because even if you did those projects, a year delay will,
Will increase
Increase.
all the other projects $200,000?
I mean, I mean, you're talking in real general terms. You know.
I mean, if I were to look back through our past, like, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but when the project was first,
Like 4 point something.
it was,
Yeah, it was
yeah,
like 4 or
it
5
was
or
like 4,
something.
and then like,
And now it's just grown.
and yeah, and that's just been because of inflationary forces that's gone up. So raw materials maybe go down, but labor might go up. So I feel that that's kind of what we've been running into. You know, we're kind of just treading water. We're like, oh, let's try to reduce this, but then it delays the project, and it's still overall that we're not. Yes, we can spread things out, but we actually are just delaying the project and just making it actually cost more in the long run.
I guess I would clarify that what you're talking about is if we delay the current proposal, it will get more expensive, and I certainly agree with you on that. I just feel like I need to say, looking at the numbers of the voters and the response that we received at the polls, that bringing this project cost down would be more important than delaying it a few years. And I understand you're trying to get grants and you're trying to do some of it, but unless we actually take a big bite of that project, I just worry that if our intention is to go back to the voters in 2 years with another $7 million, that we're going to see the same result. And I just want to propose that to you, so.
Yeah, and we definitely heard the voters. The project is already smaller than what our original intent of the project was designed. And the architect, basically said, this is as minimalist as we could get it. We heard some feedback, don't do the community room. Well, then you're shaving off, 2/3 of the building. You're not gaining the space that we need. Our library is about the same size as towns with, 5,000 people in it, not 18,000 people.
Right.
So, we really did put a lot of thought and care into the size and the scope of the project.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry, Kelly, you had a comment.
I just want to clarify on both of these submission forms, it has capital campaign and grants, et cetera, in year 2025. Can you explain what that is and why it's in the year 2025?
Because we're saying that we'll have a better idea of like what grant, because if we don't get the, it won't go to ballot, or we won't get the capital reserve fund started until the next ballot in 2024. So therefore, we wouldn't be able to apply for grants until after that period of time. So it kind of moves ahead a whole calendar year. And then the capital campaign, be working on it because we're still in the initial phase, be working on that all through this current year, probably going through 2024. So that's why it's in 25. So obviously anything we get from there would subtract from.
So when is the capital campaign starting?
We don't have a set date on that. We're still getting some of the groundwork done. It's just a little bogged down right now.
So do you think that it's appropriate to have the capital campaign and grants, knowing it's not going to kick off till 2025, in the same year as a $7.2 million bond?
We're not looking to kick it off. We're going to be working on that through, but we think we're going to know what our pledges are by then. So that's why it's in that year.
Okay.
But it's hypothetical, so we didn't want to put a number in there because we can't. We have the estimate of what we think we can raise, but not,
I was just thinking if it's going to be on there at all, we should put it in both years. That's all.
I mean, 24 and 25.
If you're going to have it on there.
I think that.
Yeah, we can definitely add that in there.
So Kelly, you're saying put the capital costs as, in that, just in the column.
Yep.
So it's not a dollar amount change.
I mean, if the intent is just to show that they're working on both of those things, it should be in both years.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that's a good change.
We can definitely do that.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else have any comments or questions? Okay. As you are aware of the process, we have a deliberation session, and at the end of the process, we may call you back and ask you at that point, but at this point, thank you for your presentation.
And if there's anything, like, you think after the fact, like, oh, I wish just email us, and we'll certainly get or email Diane, and she'll pass it to us, or she might be able to answer the question too, so.
Okay.
And
Thank
Derek
you.
will probably be in touch, because we'll set up a meeting or something like about the nuts and bolts about capital. reserve.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay, on my agenda, I have police up first, if you want to. I know you guys are.
Here are the bails.
Away.
He bailed.
You want to just jump ahead and do fire since you guys are still here?
Come on, Jeff.
Oh, wait, is that him?
Come on, Jeff.
Which chief can make it to the table
Yeah,
first?
right. Okay, and Derek, where does fire begin on our, Matrix?
So fire is in two places.
105?
Yeah, you have the vehicles on page 1,
Okay,
and then there is a project on page 3, line 106.
okay.
You have nothing in the tab.
They were on the table
Oh, it's on
for
the
you.
table, yes.
Yes.
Sorry, their tab is on the table, yes.
Yeah.
But their tab is blue, which is funny.
They're one team.
What am I looking at first?
Well, I guess we'll start with maybe
Yeah.
vehicles and then go from there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I begin this, if I may, I'd like to introduce Ben Selleck, way in the back. Ben is our new deputy fire chief, and he
excellent.
started with us a week ago. And Ben lives here in town. He came from Bedford, New Hampshire, and we're looking forward to having him on Goffstown Fire with us. So we're sort of orientating him to the CIP, and we're gonna share the budget process with him coming up, so we'll get him jumping in right away. But,
Super fun.
So thank you for having us.
Can you
Tonight-
introduce yourself for the record?
Yep, I'm Sean Murray, Fire Chief. And so we're before you tonight with our CIP program project overview. And in the package you got, on page 2 is the overall project overview from 2024 to 2029. And overall, to cover 2024 next year, we have no major projects next year with the exception of the request for the $250,000 for the fire apparatus capital reserve fund. And later in the packet, in the submission forms, you'll see I carry that from 2024 and every year right through 2029. And our experience shows it's been very successful for us by planning ahead, by committing this money there. I can tell you this last year we had funding to replace a fire truck. We actually had $775,000. And we were very fortunate in due diligence, and we were able to purchase a fire engine for $705,000.
Yes. Good.
And
Chief, can I just interrupt you procedurally? So Derek, the capital reserve fund is not actually on the matrix, right?
The capital reserve fund is not on the matrix. It shows as an offsetting revenue on the matrix.
Okay.
Let me just look at, it's at the bottom.
It's not line 30?
It's not on line 110.
Or
It's on the first, are you talking about for the vehicles?
Yeah, it should be on line
on the first-
37.
Oh,
First
sorry.
page at
There
the
we go.
bottom.
Thank you.
Yep.
There's revenues.
And the chief actually has it in his presentation. If you look at his presentation on page 6, it shows what the running balance would be if those are approved every year.
Okay.
Kind of in the middle.
Thank you. I just got a little lost. Chief, go right ahead.
so, so we're expecting delivery of that fire engine in December. So that took about 18 months to build it. However, the news isn't good. It's actually can take longer also. The other thing so that's 2023, but to give the committee some perspective too, and you'll see it later when you look at our ambulance replacement, which of course is different too, right? That comes out of the special fund, but we just received a new ambulance right at the end of last year. We had purchased a 2019 ambulance that was involved in a motor vehicle accident. And at first we thought it was minor. When the adjuster came out and looked at it, the frame was actually bent. However, our insurance carrier has authorized us to full replacement value. So we just ordered a 2024 ambulance. But again, like fire trucks, that can be 18 months to 20 months. But it's going to affect, I think in a positive way, the CIP program, because we'll have 2 brand new ambulances. And then in the matrix, we look to replace an older one in 2025, I think it is.
Yes.
But I just wanted to mention that as far as, the condition of our ambulances, that's gonna put us in a good position, because after we replace this next one, it would be another 8 years or so before we would have to replace, and get it into the cycle itself. Then back to our overview. We continue every year for the capital reserve. You'll see in 2025 is when we replace the 2017 ambulance that we have now. And then between 2024 and 2029, the only major significant purchase we're gonna have will be for a new, for a replacement engine to replace a 2005 engine. And that is engine 6. And we're predicting, or we're estimating that by then, the cost for that will be up around $800,000. So, we also have some command vehicle replacements in there, which again, we do through the budget rather than the CIP process, but I want to show you where those were. And including too, we have some boat replacements around 20,000. And some of those are pretty fluid for us. As we get closer to the replacement date, if the schedule's approved, then we'll look at the boats, and if they're holding up well, then, you know, we'll move them out as much as we can. So for the most part, it's not a solid look. We gotta replace it, depending on what condition it is. We may move it a year or two out in that direction. On page 4 is just a quick diagram of what that new fire engine is gonna look like. We had a committee spec it out and everything, and so we're pretty happy with the result of it. On page 5, you have a proposed replacement schedule from 2023 to 2043. And again, as I mentioned with not only the boats, all of our vehicles and equipment we evaluate and look at where they're fitting in on the schedule. And if an opportunity presents us to, you know, move it another year because we think it's very serviceable and it helps contribute to the overall CIP program, then we'll do that. I'll just note that the most significant CIP proposed replacement we're gonna have will come in 2030, and that's when we seek to replace the tower truck, the big tower ladder. Some of you may or may not know, we were fortunate to get a federal FEMA Assistance to Firefighters grant, which basically paid for that. And of course, we would do, you know, try and go for it again, but if we're not successful, tower ladders they were 1.2, 1.3, they're now projected at 1.8, $1.9 million. So that'll be a significant increase for us. And again, through conversations with the selectmen, you know, perhaps we'll look at that a few years before and maybe consider increasing the $250,000 a year in order to be able to, you know, make sure we have the funding for it when it comes close.
Okay, good. This is a really useful matrix, thank you. This one.
And then page 6, I'm sorry for the clarity of it, followed it for hours. But this is the overall replacement schedule for the next 5 years. And if you, as a side note, if you look at the conditions, actually our apparatus and vehicles are in good condition. And again, that's because of the support of the taxpayers and having this CIP program where we're projecting out what we're gonna need. And then from page 7 on are my submission forms. And that's, you know, that's the replacement for the engines and the vehicles. But if you're good with that, what I can move on is to have a discussion with you about the Mass Road Fire Station improvement, which is coming up in 2026. I do have a handout for you. I went back, as you know, I just finished my first year, and when we look at the fire stations and the needed improvements, for a number of years now, we were able to finish the Station 18 upgrade, and the Mass Road Station 19 station has been on CIP for quite a few years now. And back in 2015, as part of a mini study, if you would, a committee put together a fire station improvement program. And this is where the $1.6 million number you're seeing for the renovation of fire station number 19. So that's now about 8 years old on that cost. And if you look on the back side of it, it shows you what the breakdown of their estimated costs were then. So my plan again is to meet with the Board of Selectmen and have a discussion on that upcoming CIP project and get some feedback from them on what we should do, whether we still look at that 1.6 number, whether we go back and get some updated costs and come up with a number there. The other fire station improvement item that we've been working on is the taxpayers passed a warrant article to allocate $20,000 to have a fire station study of Fire Station 17 done up at Terrell Hill Road. So earlier this spring, March and April, we put out an RFP. We had 2 or 3 vendors apply. We ended up awarding a contract to Warren Street Architects. They're a New Hampshire company. They're well-versed in public safety buildings, so we've engaged them. They've been working on this study of Fire Station 17, and contractually, that's due at the end of June to get the report from them. So, again, obviously, I'll need to, go over it with the Board of Selectmen and engage them in conversation of, what do they think of the report and where it might end up, as a CIP submission. I would imagine potentially next year, to come forward for the CIP committee review.
Yeah, I can jump in on that. The select board still has a lot of work to do to see if the need for that, while we'll have a cost for the renovations, just to see if the renovations are necessary based on coverage of the community. So we still got a lot of numbers to look at.
And then, I think other than that, while I don't have any CIP equipment requests, like, breathing apparatus, defibrillators, if the committee's familiar with defibrillators, that's the machine that they can monitor your heart rate, or if you're in cardiac arrest, provide you with electric shock. We had that on CIP last year, but fortunately we were able to get an EMS grant. So that capital money we didn't have to spend. So we've taken that off. But in the coming years, maybe 3 to 4 years ahead, we may be looking to replace self-contained breathing apparatus, or some of that equipment that's very expensive, in the hundreds of thousands when you do it all at once. But we're still evaluating that, and that again, if we see that, we'll bring it to you in the future. With that, I'd be glad to answer any questions anyone may have.
Derek, I'll start just because I don't remember how we get, so when we look at line 40, so for example, the subtotal fire vehicles after revenues, that's all of the column coming down that's under fire vehicles. So for example, it doesn't mean that we would need $250,000 from taxpayers, because the CRF is in here.
Yes,
right?
so that's why you have the $250,000 in 2024. In 2025, you have 320,000 because you're adding that 70,000. But when you have the big cost of the 800,000, that does not show up that year in 2026.
Gotcha, that's what I was trying to figure out.
So
right,
that's
right.
basically that number in the red that goes across, that would, as currently proposed, would be the number that would be in either separate warrant articles or for some of the smaller utility and command vehicles, those would be contained in the CIP portion of the operating budget.
Okay, and is the CRF annual request, that goes to the voters every year?
Yes.
Okay, so that's
Capital.
not reauthorizing itself, it goes every year.
Yes, every time you appropriate to a capital reserve fund, you need to put it as a separate.
Okay, so that's what I was double checking on that, so, okay. So actually, outside of the $250,000 every year, the changes are pretty small when you just look across that red line,
Yes.
so, okay. Okay. Anyone else have questions or comments?
I just want to note that the $1.6 million is the only project for the Station 19 renovation, is the only project on the other page, so you
Right.
would have to subsequently add that to that.
Right, right. Yeah, that's a good point. Right,
In what year was that?
and that's in 2026?
Yes. On line 106.
Right. Which it comes down to 111 because there is no offsetting revenue at this time.
Yes.
so.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
The anticipated will be doing it more than that.
Right, I actually was thinking that, right. Go
On
ahead.
the 2015 Chevy Tahoe that's being replaced, I know it's 70,000, so like in the grand scheme of all these numbers, it is the smallest one. But I, like in looking at the proposal, it just seems like we're gonna put, like, that the vehicle was bought in 2015, and it's put like 6,000 miles on it every year since then. 6,625. But then we're gonna, like, in 2 years, it's gonna have another 20,000 miles on it each year. Like, are we just driving that a lot more, or?
Do you have hours on that vehicle? Are you able to track hours on the top?
And I'm just in like comparison to like the
Yes.
2020 vehicle, like, I guess, I mean, we are driving it a lot more, is obvious, but I'm just wondering why.
Let me find them here. Actually, I don't have the hours written down, but on the sheet here, in there, the mileage on the 15 is right now at 53,000. And the 2020's at 54,000. And part of that is because they are used every day. And we are authorized by the Board of Selectmen, two of us to take, the chief and the deputy, to take them home, because we're on 24-hour emergency call. So they do have a tendency to build up more mileage. And what happened too is, the big transition year was back in 2019, when we went from part-time station coverage
Okay.
to 24-hour coverage. So that made a big difference too, because what used to be not used, around the clock or anything, it now is. They get more use and more travel. So that's why I'm suggesting that instead of every 10 years, we go every 8 years, so that we can at least get either some form of decent trade-in value, or perhaps even pass them down to other departments for non-emergency use,
Well, I know that's what the police station does that with their
Yes. with their
vehicles. They give them to
cruisers.
Parks and Rec or DPW or whatever. So I just wasn't sure if that's what we were doing with these vehicles too.
Yep,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Anyone else? No? All right, I think we're good.
Thank you
Thank
very
you very
much. And please, if anyone's got any questions, feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to get the information for you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, you're welcome. One of those like little pocket hole punch ones. Thank you.
All right, looks like police projects are starting on line 95.
Oh, it's a whole bunch.
Helping you guys.
Get that.
Trying to stay on that. Find my whole punch.
That's okay.
Right.
Thank you.
What line did you say?
Vehicles start on line 4, and then police projects start on line 95.
Oh, I think it had to be 2 places. I thought you
Yeah.
said 90 and I was like, it's the end of the line.
Yeah, I was backing up just to check it wasn't on the other page, but that is not correct.
And on the table, when you came in this evening, there's a single sheet of paper that has the mileage and hours of all of the vehicles.
Here it is.
Do you want to? Yep.
And if you'll just remind us for the record, like, your name.
Eric Serino, Chief of Police, Goffstown. Thank you all for having me. So we'll just get right into it. So tonight for the 2024 CIP presentation, you'll see, based on my presentation, we've kind of done a little bit differently than we usually, because I think the last couple of years I've come in talking about really the vehicles and then kind of the PD's building kind of maintenance and where we're at with that building, and then basically how we're deferring a lot because we're hoping that someday we're going to break some ground and build a new building. But what I haven't done is actually put a new building into CIP, and this year I have. So I'll explain that towards the end. But really, for us, 2024 we're gonna really try to go with our the 3 new cruisers like we always ask for. We've been kind of doing that for many years, and it's been working. It's keeping our fleet at the top of the line to always service our community as everybody here expects. We have been seeing some very significant issues when it comes to, I'm starting to call them the COVID cars, because the 3 cars that we bought in 2020 and 2021 have been the bane of our existence. We've seen several cars that have experienced over 200 plus days in 12 months, either auto fare or unique. And just to give everybody some perspective, we have 10 marked police cars, 5 unmarked staff and detective cars, 1 big command post slash, basically it's a command post, but we use it for evidence collection, and our F-150, which is like our ACO or utility truck. So really for us, our target here is to really change out those 10 marked police cars that you see every day, plus the staff cars that kind of get recycled, as Samantha was saying before, we kind of eventually get them to DPW. But what we're experiencing is really these cars are having issues with the exhaust, brakes are failing, battery harnesses are having issues, and it's not always covered under warranty. Again, 200 days in 12 months is really hurting us because we have a staffing, we put, potentially 4 officers on the road plus supervisors. We had this year in 6 months, we had 4 details a day that needed 4 police cars. So you take those out there plus, all these cars that are in the shop, it starts to weigh on our fleet. So we've been trying to look at some different ideas to see if we can explore a different option than just the Ford Interceptor. We've seen a bunch of agencies around us that are trying the Tahoe. We've heard from our mechanics here in town that work on our cars, that our cars, the Fords, seem to have a little bit more problems, and they're a little bit more difficult to source parts, or I guess the lead times are a little bit longer. According to some of the mechanics, it seems like the Chevy Tahoes aren't as difficult to repair, and the lead times are a little bit easier. Now again, I think it's all market and trending in the nation. It just depends on what parts you're trying to source and what you're trying to fix. But we're seeing the maintenance costs go up. The sourcing of parts are taking longer to get. We've also noticed that with our Interceptor cars, they're all-wheel drive, and the torque on these vehicles is causing our tires to wear faster. We're averaging 100 to 120 miles per car that are usually out there for 12 hours a day idling. So really, we're trying to get the 3 cars to keep them, you know, in top condition, but also maybe explore potentially buying a different brand. The idea behind the Tahoe is we're seeing Ware has one, Bedford's using them, Manchester has them. We have colleagues that are up in smaller communities that have tighter roads than us that are using them. It seems like it's a little bit bigger of a vehicle. Maybe that's good for officer comfort. Maybe not as great when you're on the back roads that are windy. It's going to take a little bit more to turn around. But we'd like to explore. And based on some of the quotes we're seeing, they're really about $800 more than what we're paying for with our Ford Interceptors. Seems like the gas mileage is pretty consistent. We're getting 17 miles per gallon for the Fords. These are 15 miles per gallon. So really, it's kind of the same as we usually are asking for the 3. This year, we're just going to try to see if we can get 2 Chevy Tahoes in and explore those and see how those work for our agency. We've heard kind of some horror stories with the Dodge Chargers that other police agencies are using, but it seems like some of our colleagues around that are using the Tahoe are liking them.
Yeah, everyone.
Is there an agency or an RSA or someone who dictates what kind of vehicle you can purchase?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
I mean, I joke about being the Vesper squad and buying, you know, Vesper mopeds and using that in the summer, but to my knowledge,
Notable.
Did not look
okay.
like that last
To my knowledge, there is no RSA or anything that tells us, you know, what we can buy and what we can't buy.
Okay.
So I think really for us, it's a matter of, you know, balancing what we need for officer comfort. Again, this is their office for 12 hours, right? Monday, actually 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. And really the other balance of that is, you know, kind of the expense and really what we're willing to do, pay for the community's sake too. So I think it balances, you know, the Interceptors are balancing that, and this Tahoe we're exploring to see if it can balance it too. We had the Ford Taurus cars; those just did not work for us. There's line of sight issues in the back that weren't working for us. We've heard the same thing with the Chargers, so we're going to try to see if this is something that is worthy.
So is there, obviously you have standards or requirements for those, for the vehicle that you're moving office, if you will. Is there other vehicles that other agencies use around the country? Because I know one of the huge issues that we've had in the past couple of years is the actual ability to get the vehicles themselves, just based on production. And I don't know if that's an issue with the Tahoe, but I wonder if there's other options out there as well. I know that we've had conversations about wanting to keep the same kind of cars as the fleet so that we can use parts, but that kind of doesn't even matter anymore because the old cars that we have things don't interchange anymore. So is there a reason that we can't explore other vehicles beyond that? Or I guess I don't really know what the process is for like spearheading a new vehicle, but I'm worried about Tahoe production and outfitting of a Tahoe as opposed to just, can we look at other things?
Yeah. I mean, really, it's our decision, right? As an agency, and I would obviously invite the community as well. But you know, for us, it's a matter of what are other agencies doing, right? Like I certainly don't want to be the one agency that buys the, I don't know, the Vesper, right, or the Toyota, and it's a complete failure. I know that it's just a matter of kind of researching it and trying it. I know that the sheriffs across the street bought a Toyota Tacoma, and one of their sheriffs, who's their community engagement officer, he goes out in a Toyota Tacoma, and it's fully marked with lights and everything. I mean, I've had some of my staff ask me to buy another F-150 and drive around in a pickup truck. So it's just I think it's more of a preference. So there is no, I guess my answer is no. There's nothing that's saying we have to buy the Tahoe. We can explore anything. It's just something that we as an agency were looking at to try to see if it's a little bit different and maybe sourcing parts and mechanics can work on them a little bit easier than the Fords. But yeah, there's nothing that says we can't buy a Toyota.
I'm just worried that we're gonna have the same issues with the Tahoe that we've been having
Yeah.
with the other vehicles, and even now the outfitting, like I said, doesn't even matter anymore, because the stuff isn't even interchangeable, so, okay, I just was
Yeah.
curious.
I'm only going a little bit based on when we talked to our mechanics, they've talked about the Tahoes that Fire has, and they seem to be okay with those, so, I mean, we can explore a couple different vehicles.
Would there be a way, and I'm sure you've already thought about this, but to see the agencies in our area who have them, what model year they are? Because
Yeah.
I also worry about
The COVID cars.
post-COVID cars,
Yes, I
and
can-
knowing the amount of issues we've had with those
Absolutely.
and the cost. I'm just curious to see if they're like 2019s or something.
Ellen, you had a question.
Just a real,
Here, go
I'm
ahead.
what is it with those 2 years?
I don't know.
Well,
That's what was
I
coming
don't
out
know.
of the manufacturing of it?
Yeah, so
or-
that's my theory.
I'm sure the car didn't get COVID.
No, but my theory is that because we had these issues with shortages on personnel, they
Right.
shut the plants down. This is me in a conspiracy
That's what's
hole.
coming out.
I'm thinking that there's a quality assurance issue, right? So like we're getting these cars and these cars are just, like I said, we're having issues with the exhaust is like not welded right. It's got a hole in it. We have wire harnesses that aren't working. There was a bunch of other issues that were coming up. We had a sensor light that was out, and these things weren't covered under, warranty. And for us to have these fleet that are supposed to be within 2 or 3 years old, not even, and they're sitting at the shop for 200 days.
So other towns must be experiencing the same thing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Yeah.
there was an issue, Ellen, where we couldn't even get them. We
Yeah.
were doing
Okay.
state bid and
I just found-
manufacturing delays, we couldn't even get them.
Yeah, so to add to the point, we ordered them after the vote in I think it was April,
Yeah.
and they're on order, and come September, Ford just shut them off. They said, we're not making any more of these, and you can buy the newer models for $15,000 more.
Oh,
And I think.
And we had 3.
Yeah. We found it, we found other 3, but that's where we're just trying to figure out, is it just Ford, is it Chevy, is
Okay.
Chevy having issues too? That's something that we gotta dive into, but, yeah.
Okay.
It's just,
Ju-
we're just
just
trying to
have
explore
to
different
figure
options.
that one out.
This is my own Eric Serino's conspiracy,
Okay.
that these things are just, there's no quality assurance coming off the line, and they're just sending them out to try to get them out there, and
Okay,
so.
thank you.
You're welcome. So that's really is the vehicles.
Just a question on the vehicle. Now, you said, obviously, the quality, excuse me, quality assurance is not there. Is there a way that we can, once the vehicle comes in, to inspect, maybe that's not the right word, check out, and reject if there seems to be some faults?
It seems to me that we're getting them from the dealer. Once we get them from the dealer, we bring them to, we don't bring them to the mechanic and have them do a full sweep of the car. We bring them to our outfitter, who then puts all the lights and stuff in them, and then bring them to our decal person, and then they deliver them to us after that. Our issue was, some of these issues we're having is, we get the car, we get it on the road, it's serviceable, and then months later, all of a sudden, now this wire harness burns up, and then the exhaust magically has, an issue with it, and we fought with the dealer over and over and over again, because we thought it was an issue with delivery, and we went back and forth with them, and eventually we just had to pay the bill because the dealer wouldn't give us the car back, so it just turns into one of those things where we're fighting with Ford to say this is the issue, but we're not finding this stuff out until months down the road.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess we could talk about getting them from the dealer. Once we give them the check and we leave the lot, it's like anything else. I think we kind of own it.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, is there any indication that state bid will start covering different kinds of cars with the Ford cutoff?
I have not heard that.
I wonder if you could start a chief revolution to try to get something else on the state bid.
Yeah.
Okay. And then finally, sorry if you don't mind, one more. I'm just looking at the pricing on the actual form itself, or the cost per year, I should say. Why are all the costs different per year?
is there like an inflation factor that you throw in?
Yes.
Where are you looking at that?
Like
At the three
$10,000 this year.
cruisers, you good.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
so I worked
So they
with
changed.
finance, and basically what we did was exactly what you just said. We had so many different issues, so we're getting these bids, obviously, right now, hoping that they're gonna be good for when we buy the car next year,
Right.
or the quotes, I should say. So what we've been doing we've worked with finance and just kind of came up with a inflation number of what we've seen in the last couple of years of how it's worked. I mean, I've been hearing speculations that this fall, the market's gonna blow up with the car market and everything's gonna drop again, so these numbers might change next year. It's really hard for us, I think everybody, we're all in the same boat in this town, I think all towns, it's really hard for us to predict where we're getting the quotes now for the cars for next year, and who knows what's gonna happen next year, so we're just trying to put these numbers, this is what we're seeing for a trend. I mean, in 2029, I'm hoping we're not gonna pay $245,000 plus outfitting for 3 cars, but, you know, honestly, I don't know. You know, I don't know where we're gonna be between what the cruisers are gonna have for equipment, how much that's gonna cost.
Chief, one other thing, so knowing that and knowing the issue we had with the cost going up above what we had budgeted in years past, should we, or maybe I'm just throwing this out there, or more, it's more of a select board idea, but putting together a capital fund for police vehicle replacement that's a little bit over what we're anticipating, so that we can cushion those, I mean, if the price deflates, then we can just use it
Right.
on a vehicle in the future. I don't know if that's a good idea, similar to what we do with the fire apparatus. Do you have any thoughts? Because you looked at me immediately.
The only issue with the capital reserve fund is you have to put it as a separate article, so,
If they vote no.
so if you vote no, no means no, and then you've really impacted the police department, you might put them in a place. The reason the fire apparatus one works so well
Yeah,
is the
that's true.
purchases are so large that you're trying to reduce spikes. Whereas if you missed a year and
Yeah.
didn't get that deposit,
Yeah.
then you're potentially going a whole year without the 3 cruisers and you're hurting the entire
No, that's
fleet.
true. I just know they've taken vehicles out of budgets before too, so I was just trying to get a little bit creative,
And I'll
knowing the
give you
price
an
fluctuation.
example, so Ware still goes to
Yeah.
warrant for their vehicles, and so does in Dunbarton, in Warestown.
Yeah, this
Voted it
past year.
down so
Yeah.
many times. They were towing cruisers, going to emergencies, breaking down, and they were towing them back. And Chief Moore basically told the board, we're not going to these emergencies until we get a new car. We can't have officers going to an emergency and the car breaks down. And they kept getting voted down over and over and over again. Eventually, he came to the town and said, we have no cars, so
Yeah.
can you help us out here? And eventually, they got a couple cars, but I think that's the only downside.
No,
to that.
that's fair. I was just trying to get creative, because
Yeah.
this is such a complex issue in the past couple of years.
I mean, yeah, it's between sourcing cars and equipment. Anybody else have any other questions regarding the vehicles?
Brad, did you have a question?
Nope.
No, sorry, okay. No?
All set? So the next thing, what we're looking at is, this has been in the budget, or the CIP years ago, my predecessor had it, and we took it out. But really, the parking lot expansion, it's becoming a problem for us. And really what it is if you look at the police department, and you're looking at it from Mass Road, to the right side by the gardens,
Excuse me, that's
Yes.
line 95.
Yes, line 95.
Sorry.
to the right of the building, some of you who have come on a tour, it's where our impound lot is. It's that grassy area that sits closest to the gardens. You'll see our employees park there. What's happening now is, we had this before, but we kind of let it go in the hopes that we were going to be breaking some ground somewhere else, but it's not going that way. So really, for us, we need to kind of dig into taking that grass that's back there and really making it more of a parking lot. We're seeing that right now, the cars are parked there. That's our employee parking. They're parking there. I hate to say this out loud, but we're having, when they're mowing the lawn out back there, maybe some rocks are chipping cars, and really the big picture here is in the winter. DPW plows that area for us, it becomes, due to drainage, a sheet of ice. It is now becoming a liability for our employees. We're putting potentially salt down or sand, and it's really not good for us. We've had 2 employees that slipped back there. So we've kind of brought this back in and put it into the forefront of 2024. We really gotta get this thing fixed up here. We went out and asked for a quote from Continental. My predecessor used to joke with Megan when she was DPW director about having DPW come over and grade it. And Megan kept saying, sure, then eventually they get so backed up on their projects, there's just not, they can't help us. You know, I talked to Adam about it, and he gives me the same answer of, well, we can get to it when we can get to it, we have roads. And so we've asked a contractor just for a quote. They've come in somewhere right around this 150 is the high number, that's with drainage. So as we kind of get closer towards budget season, we're probably gonna get a more refined number. But really, that's something our agency needs to kind of work on for the sake of our employees. Because we can't park out front, that's, you know, visitor parking too, so. Any questions for that? I'll move on. The next thing, I've taken this out, we put it, this has been in for, I don't even know when the exact, I have to pull up the sheet here when we've had this in. It's been years we've been trying to get a new locker room. Again, I've told this committee, most of you are all been on it for a while. I've taken the locker room out. We've now put it back in because we're not building a new police department anytime soon. I'm looking to just expand we did that renovation to the women's locker room, which was much needed, and I'm super proud of that, but we really need to focus on the women's room, the men's room, and this kind of spare workout room that we used to have that doesn't really, nobody works out in it. You know, we have kind of an idea of somewhere around $250,000, but that is, who knows what it's going to be in a couple of years. It's a placeholder for right now. But the idea is we really need to focus on newer technology for lockers, a bigger space for our employees to change, new bathroom facilities. We just had someone the other day showering in the men's shower, which then it kind of, the shower thing was full of so much soot and I don't know, water build up, not soot, but build up from you know, all the minerals in the water, and it basically just broke as he was turning it. And so we need to kind of build a newer locker room. And at some point, I wish I could, maybe I'll take some pictures and then go down to Londonderry PD, who has a brand new locker room, and show you what really a professional looking locker room should look like. And that is ceiling to floor lockers that people can put their stuff in. It keeps it clean. There's airflow in there to air out the bulletproof vests. So that's something that I'm putting back in again for 2026.
Yeah, go ahead, Brad.
Although it says expansion, this is basically within the structure you have now.
Yep. We're just going to try to take the square footage we have and work with a contractor to try to, you know, obviously redo the bathroom areas with the showers, and then potentially the whole locker room area as well for a changing area.
So it's a renewal.
Yeah.
Or an expansion.
Sure, yeah.
But if you do something like that, it wouldn't have an impact. A certain part of the area would have to be closed down or not used. So you're limiting space already where you don't have enough space.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's a good point. Yeah, because if they start building it, we'll be sitting somewhere. We'll be in the gym somewhere. I mean, the garage out there.
Well,
But it's definitely a need. I mean, I've said this before and I'll say it again. I mean, if we had the ability to know that we are breaking ground and we had conceptual designs for a new police department, we said, okay, there's a light at the end of this tunnel, I would throw this thing out. I think we've been dealing with this locker room for so long that we would just deal with it knowing that, hey, in 5 years and 6 years and maybe 10 years, there is a new building with all brand new locker rooms. We would just, I just don't know where we're gonna be in 5 years here. So I gotta keep the building moving forward with the locker room. And I'll tell you, not to kind of beat it down, but when you look at our agency and you think of a SWOT analysis, which is like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, the locker room, when people come in there, and even our building, when they walk in and see that, it's a little bit depressing. I mean, I think our lockers are from the high school from years ago. So it's just one of those things that we're trying to keep it moving forward and recruit and retain people, so that's part of it.
I know you talked about that last year, about recruiting and retaining staff, and you know, it is an important point because we lose money every time we lose a staff person who comes here and goes.
Yeah.
So it is actually like important that people are satisfied with where they're working.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, you know, the officer can go out in a brand new police car, have the best technology, because IT really provides us with some really great technology. But when they come into the building, you know, they're looking at the walls that are dated from '87 still. You know, you walk into the locker room and the lockers are like maybe from high school, from years ago, and it is kind of.
Ellen?
Is there, has there been, I know I've never heard of it, but I see it on here, new building. Is there a police department community building committee that has been looking into the statistics of what we need and where we put it? Do we have land for it? I mean, it takes years to
Yeah.
get something passed for building of anything
Sure.
in this town, any town, I'm sure. But I'm not too sure the public is even aware that this is anywhere coming. And I would think that getting something put together involving general community people might be extremely helpful in determining the needs and the understanding on the part of the voting public to understand what this is about. I mean, I have no idea what's needed. I have no idea where we put it.
Yeah.
If it would be added on to what we have, I have no idea. But I'm certainly, and I'm sitting here, so I probably know more than most people out there. But I would think that if it was, we need that coming up in the future, that it took years to get something like that put together and passed, that it might be time to do that.
Well, I'm glad you said that. And I don't know if we want to skip the records management section and just go right to the building. But you're absolutely right. And I've said this since my time here is, you know, I'm all about our community, and I believe that, you know, the biggest holdup for us with this building, as we've been talking to the select board since 2019 about it, we were really kind of hedging our bets and putting all our eggs in the basket with the county land next door to us. Derek and I have kind of met our match when it's come to trying to get that land to really get some progress there. So we've kind of gotten to a point where the county has really been put in a position where if they do try to sell that land, they have to sell it to the general public. And we know that Dunkin' Donuts wants that land. And obviously Dunkin' Donuts probably has more money than the Goffstown Police Department to buy that land. So our biggest holdup is for kind of what we've been talking about is just really finding a place we can call home. And then once we find home, we can start to use maybe some impact fees, some other fees, funds to start working with a committee and an architect and just start to have some conceptual designs, right? But it's hard when, you know, if you don't know how much land you have, whether your building goes this way or if it goes this way, right? So my hope is exactly what you just said, is now that I put it on CIP and we're now going to start talking about it in the community officially and really start to figure out where we're going to put this thing in the town of Goffstown, is to have a committee with people that are, you know, community members, maybe some people that are business owners and PD and a lot of stakeholders, like you said, that can understand it, can help buy into it, and then help us balance our wants versus our needs.
The first thing is the land.
Yep.
It's becoming more and more scarce.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know,
Yeah, we're restricted by
Thanks,
location,
Alan.
which makes it very difficult.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm
Yeah.
absolutely sure.
you know, and really for us, and I'll just get into it because, you know, I had a really great meeting with Steve Monier, who was a former chief here, who was really instrumental on building this, getting the police department out of this building and putting it over there. And he did inform me that. He says, you know, they started looking at that building in 1982. And by the time they got through the process, it was 86 when it got voted in, I believe, and passed, and they built in 87, right? So it took that time to kind of build that that kind of the town. The difference there was they had money from federal grant that gave them the EOC, so that was about $300,000, and then they had a private business, some land swap deal that paid $200,000. So for $500,000, they built the police department at no expense to the taxpayer that is almost 43 years old and is still standing. That's one of the reasons why we can't go up on that building, because it was all built with residential, 2x4s.
Yep.
The land, I think, is like maybe a little bit more than 2 acres. So for me, and that was built when they had 19, employees, and now we're almost at 40, depending, 42 to 45. And my vision is, what does Goffstown look like in 10, 20 years, 30 years, right, as we're growing? So we need to have that kind of group, that sustainability, that growth.
And it looks like we'll be growing with regard to multifamily housing. I mean, apartments and stuff seems to be what's coming.
Yeah.
And
So I've kind of put it out, right, in the $20 million, again, is a placeholder. I kind of base that a little bit on Wells, Maine is kind of the same size as us. In 2016, they built a safety complex, and that was about $15 million back then. Beautiful place, though. So really, this is the start of talking about it officially, and really, we've been talking about it with the board, but we have some ideas and some land. We gotta navigate that spot. But I think once we find that land, we're gonna probably hopefully start putting some stuff together. And by the way, the committee that worked with them in 1982, there just happened to be an architect who donated all of his services to town of Goffstown.
that's happened a few times over the years.
Yeah.
People, they're very generous and helpful.
So really, that's my pitch for our agency. On a side note, in 2017, we had a company come in, Stan Tech came in, and they really looked at our buildings, the needs, and without changing the square footage, they really reconfigured it and gave us kind of a footprint. I can email that to the committee, you can see the report. And that was in 2017, that was $3 million just to switch the floor plan around, add some HVAC systems, but really there was no expansion of the square footage. And again, as we're growing as a community and the agency is growing, $3 million to just change some walls and some ACs and heat is, we felt in 2017 wasn't worth it. Wasn't worth it.
Good luck.
Thanks. I'd love to see you on the committee.
Well, that's what we do. They start putting it on the CIP and we start talking about it, so, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the big thing. I kind of held off, and as I said, and now we're going to just put it on there and say, hey, this is what we need to do. And I guess I'll jump back. The last thing that we're really looking, as we're going to need, is our records management and our computer-aided dispatch software. As I said last year, really that is the kind of the backbone or the nervous system of our agency. All of our dispatchers, our police officers, our records, our support services, everybody uses this main software. It's what houses all of our records, all of our data. It houses all of our, when they're dispatching fire, police, EMS to calls, they use this software. We had a new software installed in 2013. That company, as like anything else with technology, is not really working with us for this outdated software. They are now trying to sell us their new software. So we have been looking at different vendors. One quote we just received this year from a different vendor was at a tune of about $650,000 plus a $86,000 a year operating cost. So the overall cost that first year was about $737,000. It blows my mind personally that software costs that much money, to buy it and then yearly operate it, but I guess we're at the mercy of technology now. But that that's the quote we have. We really have to take a couple years to figure out what's the best fit for our agency.
And so I was just going to ask, hang on. So given that you have it as a priority number 2, but you have that out past the 250,000, so you feel like 2027, it can wait until then?
I think I have it in 26.
No.
In the matrix, it's 2027.
Okay.
And Derek, also, the numbers, like, what he gave us tonight says 737, and the matrix says 651.
So he had 86,000 of that was the recurring
In that first year I added.
operating costs.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I pulled that out and put it in the comments.
Yeah.
So it'd be budgeted, I'm assuming.
Oh, is that why?
Yeah.
Okay.
So-
I wasn't clear on that comment.
I had my notes for 26 and I had it in the spreadsheet for 27, so we're at this point of somewhere in those years, we have to get this done. I mean, quite honestly, we could probably use it before then. I have to wrap my head around the money, and I don't want to jump into a software that, so the software we currently use, just about every agency in the state of New Hampshire is on. And it really works for us because we're interconnected, and of course, like anything, we all jump in as cops and then we're all like, okay, now what do we do? And other agencies that have a different mechanism in their communities for funding are buying software that the other agencies, so now they're all jumping into this other software, and I'm kind of hesitant right now. I just not ready to just jump into the same software that every agency's doing. We've been hearing some grumblings from different agencies, so we're really trying to do our due diligence and explore several options. But we really needed to see kind of a number of where we're at. And this company gave us a number. And we went and saw it and looked at it and really went through it. They gave us a big demo. And from my understanding, it was pretty good. So,
Is this gonna remove a lot of like the paper that you have in your office?
unfortunately, I don't think so. And I think you and I had that conversation. I
Yeah.
think part of our paper problem is some of it is we have to keep, right? So we're required by law, all arrests have to be kept indefinitely. Yes, it'll help the future because eventually the software will be, all of our arrests will be digitalized, so we have that. The stuff that you're seeing now is the stuff from the 60s,
Yeah.
the 70s, and before the, all the other, I don't know if we had a flood at one point, but all those records we have to keep. Yeah.
Ellen, you have a question?
Yeah, does this cost include security for that software?
Well, that's a question I don't know. I would say that if we're paying $86,000 a year for operating costs, that would include the software updates, all of those, those security things. I can't answer that question.
I just know because
There's a hand in the back of the room.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yes, Chief.
Okay.
It does
Good.
include the security out. I'm asking because in another hat I wear, we've been going through in the school district.
Yeah. The
The security of all that data, and it made me wonder.
I mean,
Yes, and it
you
does, so
have the
that's-
software which will patch itself like Windows does, right? They update the security, but then we also have our network security that IT here has to deal with
Right,
for that
okay.
kind of cyber
Well, it's good
attacks.
to hear it's there.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's really it for now.
So can I just clarify then? So you've got then 2 items in 2026, right? The 250,000 and then the 651. Those would both be under 2026? And you don't have anything in 2025?
Yeah. I mean, we can,
Right.
we could move it. I'm sorry.
2025.
Right.
Which one?
Move the software to 2025?
2025.
Yeah.
If
that's
you,
what I
if you
agree.
guys would be willing to accept that, I could make those changes and resubmit it. I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Moving the 250 to the 2025?
Yeah, Kelly said we have to vote on that.
Wait, are we
procedurally.
moving the locker into 2025 or the software to
The
2025?
software to 2025.
Okay, so the 651.
Yes. So that's line item, what does that help me out here? Glasses. are-
97?
97.
97?
Thanks.
So I just want to make sure I'm saying this correctly. So it's 651 975 for the software, but then you add the operating for that first year, which is another 86, so the total of that first year would be 700,037,058, so. I
So
think-
Derek, should the full number be in the matrix?
I can make that adjustment. I would suggest to the committee that you wait until the school presents before you start moving items around.
Plus we'll have to. look at
Because
the-
that year is a pretty significant one for the school.
2025, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I will say that I think it's a good idea. It isn't, we are at the point where we're okay, but Brian in IT is telling me that we are getting to a point where it is becoming a problem. So I would say that we really can't go past 2027. I mean, we're gonna be, I'm gonna be begging, I'm gonna come to the Board of Selectmen and be telling them that something is failing.
My computer crashed twice today, so computers are just
Yeah.
awful if they don't work. So
So if we can
Not
make,
useful.
if we can keep that, and I respectfully ask this, if you guys make that thought and that, you have that suggestion, it might be something worth thinking about, even with the school too.
So maybe instead of voting to move that tonight, we'll put it under consideration for when we look at the matrix as a
Yep.
I was
whole.
gonna say,
Okay.
that's my suggestion.
Okay. All right, good.
So we'll wanna look at the whole,
The bottom numbers.
the bottom numbers.
Right.
We do need to, because
Yeah.
2025 is the highest of all years on this, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, we could move it to 26 too.
and I think that's just the town side, so.
Oh, the pool. Where's the pool? I forgot where the pool is.
Yep.
Yes.
The pool,
Rick offered you land instead of a soccer field. That's a whole basket of worms to open up, so.
He did? What a nice guy!
Did not.
Oh, he did.
This is how we play the fun game of who goes where, so. Okay,
Well-
anything else you want to?
That's it. I mean, I think everybody here has my contact information. I'm, available to either do walkthroughs, answer questions, come back and kind of explain things, take pictures, present. Just let me know whenever you guys, if you have any questions or concerns. Certainly, we're always available.
Okay.
Thank you all for your time.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. All right, so Derek, we got through tonight's agenda.
Yes.
Coming up for those who are playing the fun game on TV, we've got June 29th, which is the school district. Scott gonna be here, or did he conveniently schedule vacation again?
You did? Nice.
I don't know, that's what I was asking. He's gonna let me know about that later.
Just gonna leave you to present the whole thing.
I just want to remind you once again that on the 20th, I won't be here. I will be on vacation,
The 20th?
the 20th of July.
Oh,
We'll be
okay.
working off the TV.
And then we got like a double.
It's hard for me to think beyond June.
Yeah, it's moving fast though.
Well, no, but because we have like a week off and then we have the 29th and then we don't have a week off, we go right to July 6th.
Correct.
Okay.
going over this
All right,
on Monday, so.
motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn?
So move.
All right,
I'll
all those in
second.
favor? Aye, opposed, abstained? All right, have a good
Thank
night.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
thank you, GTV.